Thank you, Travis. This is the Board Executive Committee of the East Bay Regional Park District meeting on Thursday, February 10. We're starting at 12:32. The meeting is now called to order, and I'm going to ask our recording secretary, Becky Fang, to take the committee roll call.
Yes, this is Becky Fang, recording secretary, taking roll. President Coffey.
Present.
Director Rosario.
Here.
Director Lane.
Present.
Okay. Park District management staff attending this meeting today include GM Sabrina Landreth, DGM Ana Alvarez, AGM Christina Kelchner, AGM Carol Johnson, AGM Jim O'Connor, Chief Brian Holt, Sean Dugan, Regional Program Trails Manager. Today's meeting is held pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361. Board members and staff may participate via phone and video conferencing. We are providing live audio and video streaming. Members of the public wishing to make a public comment can do so live via Zoom by submitting an email or by leaving a voicemail. This information is noted on the agenda. If there are no questions about the meeting procedures, we will begin.
Okay, thank you, Becky. We're going to move to our first agenda item, but I just want to note that each of our agenda items will allow for public comment on that specific topic. And then the fourth item on our agenda, public comments, we allow for public comments on topics that are not on our agenda this morning, and this afternoon. So we'll come to those comments on item 4 before we close out the meeting, but we'll have presentations, we'll have board comment and questions, and then we'll open each agenda item to public comment. And we've received written email that has been distributed up to just before this meeting, in fact, written email that's been distributed to the committee members, and we've all read them. And we thank people very much for the written comments. So with that, let's move to item number 2, Regional Parks Foundation Annual Report for 2021. Thank you, Carol Johnson.
Thank you, President Coffey, and greetings to all the other board members and guests that are on today. I am Carol Johnson. I am your AGM of Public Affairs, but I'm also today actually wearing my hat of Executive Director of the Regional Parks Foundation. And I'm happily here with 3 of the Regional Parks Foundation Executive Committee board members, and I'd like to introduce them now. We have Peter Liu, who is our president. We have Les Hausrath, who is our vice president, and Helene Morrison, who is our secretary. So greetings to my board members and thank you for participating. I would like to start this off by asking Peter, our president, to say a few words, and he and I will tag team on this presentation. So Peter?
I think I was muted and I can't share my video, so, oh, here we go. Hello. Thanks, Carol, and President Coffey. It's great to see you twice in maybe 2.5 weeks. And thanks for inviting us, and Director Rosario. And it's been a pleasure for me to have been a board member of the foundation in our, mission to support the Park District. And this is my final year on the board, and they kind of let me go upstairs to the president's role. So I take that honor as also a great pleasure to continue this collaboration. 2021 was a challenging year for everyone, but from our financial performance standpoint, especially in terms of fundraising, it has been relatively spectacular. And we feel like this is really just the beginning of the true potential partnership between the foundation and the board over the years, when Carol and especially Juliana Shermer, who joined us in the probably past 4 or 5 years, there's been a transition towards sort of greater abilities to potentially look at fundraising, look at major gifts and so on. So I think much of that's coming to fruition. So we're very excited to share some of those I believe, the beginning of the road with you. Back to you, Carol.
Thanks, Peter. So I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. And at the end, if there's any questions, I will be happy to take them. So let me go ahead and start that. Okay, can everybody see that? Let me make sure that I have this on my shoot. It doesn't seem to be on the PowerPoint. Well, my apologies about this. I'm going to have to move this, I suppose, just on my own here.
Take your time.
First of all, let's see if I can, here we go. Sorry, technology sometimes stumps me. I'm happy to say that 2021 was a spectacular year, and it was the 10th consecutive spectacular year of growth for the foundation. You can see the giant number in front of you. When I took over this position some 10, 11 years ago, we were just barely over $1 million in annual fundraising, and today we are over 6.8. And we also have a relationship with the Habitat Conservancy in managing their endowment, for which annually we also get some funding, which obviously helps our bottom line. Some of our achievements this year, including resiliency during the pandemic, was really important because many other nonprofits were down. Many corporate funders were not funding as much as they had been in the past. And we, despite all of those challenges, were very resilient. Our total fund balance now is at an unprecedented 15 million, and will be growing in years to come. Just to give a little update on the Habitat Conservancy, the Habitat Conservancy expects that their portion of donation to us over the next 30 years will amount to $80 million, which will be exclusively used for the East Bay Regional Park District in managing the properties that were purchased in partnership with HCP.
Carol, if I could jump in, that's a function that's, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I just maybe will go on a limb to say it's a bit of a unique function that the foundation can help serve, in that this money from the Contra Costa Conservation is meant for the future. And so obviously, when we work in the public domain, budget are sort of created and budget are spent. And in the role of a foundation of being able to build an endowment, it's creating that sort of funds for the future or the path that's somewhat unique. And with that, what we started with the Contra Costa Conservation, of course, that dollars is not insignificant. We're talking, $80 million. And of course, that's, both money contributed as well as money that's reinvested or invested and earned. So depending on what your assumptions about future investments and being able to layer on more of these type of funding, this is something that one can, really see the dividends in the future, and perhaps, again, something that's uniquely a function that the foundation can help serve.
Thank you, Peter. So here we have some additional achievements. I mentioned the 3.3 million that we received from the East Contra Costa HCP. By the way, that was a relationship that was not just given to us. We had to earn it through applying to be their fundraiser, their fund balance holder of their endowment. And we actually beat out some other large fundraising organizations, including the East Bay Community Foundation and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, two very big powerhouse foundations in the Bay Area. We have our investment portfolio, which obviously is benefited by these significant donations through the Habitat Conservancy, has been tremendously positive, despite the kind of roller coaster that is going on right now in the markets. We have some very good investment portfolio directors, and again, is one of the reasons that the Habitat Conservancy was so interested in working with us was our returns. So our portfolio balance right now is at 3.9 as of December 31st, 2021 for investment gains. Our fundraising snapshot is as follows. Membership program has done exceptionally well since the first year of COVID. Well, I should say since 2021. 2020 was not a great year for fundraising for members, but they largely have come back with a firestorm of sorts in terms of wanting to be associated as a member, getting back into the parks, having those benefits. So you can see we are almost at $1 million annually with our membership program. I'll talk more about that in a second. Our grants raised would be just under $250,000. Our individual and corporate donations is where it's at right now in terms of our growth at almost 4 million. Our bequests, and we were very saddened by the deaths of some of the individuals that we are receiving bequests from, but are delighted that they have decided to leave a legacy into perpetuity with the gifts that they're leaving, that we can work with the Park District on putting some special projects together on their behalf. Campership appeal is also up, and that is really has been the signature program for practically 40 of the 50 years that the foundation has been around. It provides more than just campership to kids, because as you know, we really haven't had any outdoor events or camps for the kids because of the COVID, but we're funding other youth development programs through the education department at the Park District that benefits from having those funds. And then our year-end appeal, we do two appeals a year, one's in the spring, which is campership, and the last one is in the latter part of the year, and that also has done exceptionally well. Some of our grant highlights from specific grantors have been Cargill Salt, has been with us for the last couple of years, and they have been very generous with a variety of things in the past. But this year, or 2021, they funded a greenhouse that will be built at Ardenwood Historic Farm, and will be involved with the implementation of a pollinator educational program. The Fire Safe Council provided almost $75,000 for goat grazing. Now, this is something that the Park District could not get the Fire Safe Council to provide. So we came back directly to the Fire Safe Council, and they were generous through the foundation. Fremont Bank has been long supportive of the foundation, and this year they're very interested in safety initiatives, generally speaking, and volunteer initiatives. And this year they supported us with some life-saving equipment that the fire department can use to respond to vehicle accidents on the roads. DuPont is a new funder and provided some assistance for our shorebird conservation work. Back to membership. So our total members are at 12,200. Actually, the other day I heard that it's even higher. And that is 30% above our record number in 2020, where we had a fall off from the COVID year. That increased also in some of our higher end membership categories, as you can see, Donor Circle. Gifts of membership, which usually come during the holiday season, are also just kind of skyrocketing year over year. Where people are giving gifts to their family members of the outdoors through memberships through the Park District. And then we've had, there's always been a question about members. Do they really just want the discounts, or are they really philanthropic? And what we're finding is that they're both. And so we've had significant increases in people who are members that want to also be providing more than just their membership through additional philanthropic use.
Right. I mean, Carol, when I looked at the numbers, it's definitely, I would say, both aspirational in terms of, there's probably more that we could do, but also somewhat impressive in terms of when you compare the membership to other parks foundations, statewide or otherwise. If you sort of look at how many members versus parks or acre parks or whatever it is, this is a pretty strong number. But I think of this term influencer. I don't want to overuse it. I'm a member, and I know many of my friends are, and that whether it's because of the parking, whether it's because of deeper connection, I would say these members actively selected to become a member. So in some ways, when I look at the sort of low hundreds of thousands of people that votes positive for Measure FF, in proportion to this number, I mean, that's also significant because these are folks that if they're like me, are active users and invite our friends to appreciate the values of the parks. I've done a number of business meetings in the parks during the pandemic, or continue to probably do some. I mean, sometimes, walking and talking is a lot better than Zoom. So I think, again, the value of the parks have, shown its, unexpected value during the time of COVID. And I think from the membership standpoint, there's probably a lot of opportunities for us to expand and build upon.
Thanks, Peter. Just a couple more comments about membership. I want to give a personal thank you and shout out to our membership team, because without them, our membership would not be accepting this kind of increase, and we wouldn't have the greatest customer service out there that our members actually tell us they appreciate. So thank you to my team for that. Also, because we are growing in membership so much, we are going to be upgrading our database systems so that it can accommodate that type of increase overall, and membership through the website, which is also going to be taking on another update or upgrade, I should say. And lastly, I just want to say about membership for those that aren't members, or maybe if you are members, it's relevant. I know myself, I am a member of a variety of organizations, and I have to say I get hit up quite frequently, often with paper in the mail asking me for more donations. We don't do that here. We absolutely only acknowledge our members for funding purposes once for a renewal, and then we have a second if they haven't renewed, and that's it. We do not paper our members, because of course we are relevant to ensuring that our environmental footprint is as small as possible as well. So I think that's important to acknowledge, because I know that there's a lot of other organizations that we all get kind of papered to death. So let's move forward with our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. This is one that Director Rosario and Director Corbett have been involved in, and I thank them for their engagement. We have a very robust team headed up by Keith White, who is our director who represents Salesforce. He is the chair of this committee, and probably it was one of the most robust committees to make new opportunities come to fruition. And so one of the things that we focused on this year was training to our board and staff about equity, inclusion, diversity, really what that means. So we brought in external trainers to do that. We've worked with the City of Oakland and their diversity director to also, bring that valuable insight to us. We've also partnered with the district to better figure out and understand who we serve and identify those gaps. That is something that I know the board of directors for the district is interested in learning more about the actual data of who we serve. We couldn't agree more. And so we are very much involved as best we can to help the districts figure out and understand how to get that data information. Our funders want that information as well. We have contributed to the Day of Peace for the last several years. Mona Co has put this together through the United Nations. And this year, of course, we created the Peace Poll, which was fantastic. In the picture, you can actually see it was just an amazing, unifying, inclusive environment on the day that we celebrated that. And right in the foreground is our Director Keith White, our diversity chairperson of that picture. And then we've completed our first full year of the Access for All free membership pilot program. And what that looks like is free memberships to free family memberships that are distributed through organizations. So we are not in the area of selecting the individual families. We work with the following organizations, as you can see, very much representative of the full Park District. In some targeted communities, we're eager to put more investment in: Oakland, Bay Point, Richmond, places of that sort. You can see the type of involvement with these organizations. And new for this year, very excited to see that we have engaged with some tribal entities. And that was a direct relationship developed in partnership with our other folks in the Park District that are engaged with tribal entities as well. Our Cultural Resources Coordinator, Anna Marie, and Brenda Montano, who is our supervisor of our Archive and History Center. So we're delighted to have more access given to these folks through these agencies.
And Carol, maybe if I can add just on this particular program, with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion, the foundation can at times, very rapidly test and roll out programs that, one can see how it matches with the community members. This membership program originated from the DEI committee, probably, I think it was around 2 years ago, and from inception to initial execution was probably measured in a matter of weeks. And since then, that program has, again, found its resonance with these community groups. So we've continued it for 2 years. And also it took advantage of what I would call the foundation's board members' reach, if you will. Outdoor Afro is, a connection via, one of our board members who serve on that board, or who may have another board colleague at another board that served on the board of Outdoor Afro, for example. And some of the other names, including Girl Scouts of Northern California, especially, being able to hone in on the troops, particularly, that where they represented neighborhoods where there were not a lot of access to the outdoors. These are things that, again, the ability to experiment, the ability to do things quick, has been very valuable in our work on DEI.
Thanks, Peter. Program support. This is the nest egg of what we do for the Park District. This is the only reason that we are in existence, is to support 100% to EBRPD. So despite last year actually not having the ability to serve in person, our creative naturalists absolutely went kind of hog wild with a lot of virtual programming, and we still were able to serve upwards of 8,100 youth and seniors and people from communities that don't have access through their programming. You can see the examples there. Some more examples of the types of programs that are developed by and exclusively by the naturalists, the educators. Additional program support included some development of actual hands-on educational toolkits, so that despite us not being able to host people in the parks, the naturalists came up with some other unique ways to say, well, we're going to develop these educational toolkits to deliver directly for distance learning. And so we were pleased to be able to support that. And lastly, Lifeguard Services. Despite having no services available with our water, with the East Bay Regional Park District's water facilities, we did still focus with Lifeguard Services on being able to give them some additional life-saving equipment last year. Some stewardship support. This is a growing area of the foundation's portfolio interest. And so you can see that we are right in lockstep with the Park District's interest in fuels reduction efforts. And so going back and through, as I said earlier, with the California Fire Safe Council, we were awarded $75,000 to assist that effort. We provided $25,000 to the Park District's ecological health assessment, which we're looking forward to seeing that study once it is completed. And then a $12,500 initiative for tree mortality study with UC Berkeley. Some of our community engagement, while it was a little bit scarce because we really weren't able to get out as zealously as we would have liked, we were able to work with the Park District and participate in some of their events that they hosted, including the Lafayette Moraga Trail 45th anniversary. We actually served ice cream out there to the trail walkers that were just walking by and participating in that. Tilden Regional Park's 85th anniversary and the Brazilian Room's 80th anniversary. We were able to be on site and show off what we do and provide a little beer from our new vendor. We have not lost Drake's, we still have Drake's, but Headlands Brewing Company is out of Lafayette, and much like Drake's, their staff absolutely love the parks. And so they asked us if they could work with us on using one of our park maps to, kind of be shown on their label. And so they rolled out a Tilden hazy brew. Sorry, not jazzy. It makes you feel jazzy though if you have more than two. And I also believe that they have another. I think Contra Loma may be another one. So great new partner for us, and frankly was recommended by Drake's president, who also sits on our board. So we're really excited about that. Planned giving, another significant area of work that we do. It doesn't immediately necessarily equate to immediate funding, but as you know, as I mentioned, we had 2 bequests this year, a very generous, unexpected bequest from John Sutter and his Living Trust. Now, John had already given the foundation $2 million the year previous because he would like to see the Crowley property come to realization, and he wanted that funding of $2 million to go toward that. This $1 million, his family would like to see that go somewhere in the Oakland area. And then from the estate of Miss Radocha Kratt, we received a very significant and appreciated gift. We had estate planning seminars throughout the year, and have really continued to have a very, I think, significant number of people coming to those seminars to learn about what, might interest them in terms of future estate planning. Capital projects, of which we received $1 million grant several years ago, have really finalized in terms of coming to fruition. So what you see here is what we created with regard to the 5 projects. We picked projects that were in all the visitor center areas. In 2019, the Tilden Creek, a Restoration Creek, was completed in 2020. We had Black Diamond Mines, and 2021 last year, of course, was DelVal, very exciting. And 2022, we will have the dedication of the Shadow Cliffs Pavilion, which you see on the top right, and the Sunol Visitor Center updated green barn. So we're really excited about that. Here's a couple of pictures of the DelVal Visitor Center and a bit of the Park District celebration. So we were happy, and our funder was very happy to be able to fund those projects. Getting close to the end here, I promise. This is a snapshot of our board of directors from 2021. Terming off last year was Jess Brown, our longtime PG&E director, as well as Tom Meyer, our longtime Kaiser Permanente director. And we are replacing Tom with a new director from Kaiser, which we're excited about. And we have several other individuals in the pipeline. And then looking forward, lastly, this year we're going to be developing an extended 3-year strategic plan. We're going to be doing more work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion area with an internal focus on increasing our own diversity in our board selection, creating inclusive policies and procedures, continuing the training, which, by the way, we've also provided funding for training all of the naturalists for the last several years of their own educational interests in diversity, and then refining our all membership program. Externally, we hope to continue building external partnerships, hoping that we can get outdoors a little bit more in the community events, and considering some listening sessions within those communities in partnership with the community relations plan that Mona Co will be bringing forward this year. And then interagency, again, I mentioned it earlier, but we really want to work with EBRPD to understand the constituents that we are serving with the foundation funding, and so that we can help address bridging gaps. So those are just a few things in addition to working with Indigenous groups. You can see our plan for membership primarily is to focus on updating our platform so that we can accept even more members. Communication, we are looking at an overhaul of our website, general brochure, creating a new newsletter. And lastly, 2 important things. One is collaborating with our local animal shelters on a campaign to help the Park District capture and remove and rehome feral cats that are endangering wildlife. We are funding $25,000 annually to these animal shelters in total, so that we can give them just a little bit of funding to thank them for their volunteer help on behalf of the Park District. And we're also working with them on an education campaign about keeping cats out of parks. And then finally, something that has been on our plan for many years, we're hoping very soon, and Peter is kind of my go-to person on this, because 10 years ago, I think I started to talk to Peter about a capital campaign for Tilden Environmental Education Center. And here we are years later, we still haven't yet launched it. We're getting closer. We have acknowledged it in our Compass magazine, but we haven't formally started to develop any of the protocols that would be necessary for taking on the campaign. We're hoping the district is getting closer so that we can work with them on that. And with that, that is our report. Thank you for letting us indulge you in what I hope is seen as a very positive partnership with the Park District and the foundation, now going on its 53rd year, I believe. So thanks very much. And if Peter or I can answer any questions, we're happy to do so.
Thank you, Carol. It's fascinating to me how we have so many facets of the regional park system and now the foundation that are projecting very positive outlooks for the year to come off of, given the circumstances, very good 2021 years. And so consistent with what we've been experiencing. That report was very positive, and I appreciate it and the detail. The Headlands folks also produce a Los Trompas brew, a Bear Creek brew, and a Grizzly Peak brew. So they are thoroughly involved with the regional park system in developing beer, which good parks deserve good beer. So I think that's a good development.
Thanks for sharing that. I guess I need to get out and start drinking more beer.
Yeah, I was at
Thank
an
you.
event out there. I brought Director Lane home some Los Trompas. Hopefully she shared it. Just a thought. I want to turn your presentation over to my colleagues, Director Lane, Director Rosario, for comments and questions. Directors, raise your hand. Director Rosario.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Regional Parks Foundation Board and especially the outgoing members, and including Carol. You've announced your retirement. You've really certainly built the Regional Parks Foundation to an extreme, to its present position of incredible growth. So congratulations to you for that. And my special shout out to the efforts around the DEI subcommittee. I just think it's such a dynamic committee, and things happen very quickly. And the leadership there under Keith is just outstanding. And I look forward to continue to participate in that committee. And also in your strategic planning, is there any thought of restructuring? It seems having the public affairs and regional parks also be the executive director seems kind of clumsy to me. So I don't know if there's any thoughts to having some kind of reorganization there.
Well, I appreciate all the praise, and frankly, it's really not for me, it's for the team that I work with. And I want to say that to all of the folks that work with the foundation. And I also want to say it to the board. Our board is extremely dedicated and amazingly connected to one another. And, we enjoy each other's time. So thank you for the acknowledgement. As it relates to the question that you just mentioned, that is something that our general manager will be addressing going forward as she considers the recruitment. And our board, and Peter, I'm going to let you speak in a minute, and our board will be meeting with Sabrina fairly soon to have that very conversation. So that's, Peter, if you have anything else you want to add about that.
Yeah, no, I think we are definitely, first of all, going to miss Carol so much, and at the same time, we've seen how our team, Juliana and others, have served the foundation and the park districts. So we're excited about the future. I think most of us are volunteers, and a lot of us come from the corporate world. So we're going to just be focusing on results, and we'd love to kind of work with general manager and the district board on whatever form. So results driven, org chart, completely open. I would just say personally, I'm quite familiar with a number of different types of arrangements. Have friends who serve on the State Parks Foundation board, have friends who are on the UC Berkeley Foundation, know very well Sierra Club Foundation, and I serve on a number of other foundation boards. So in some ways, we've seen all kinds of different ways of alignment. So we're kind of, I think, just open to working, with whatever that fits best the future. And I think that this board will continue to, I think, be excited about the prospects, over many different forms. But at the same time, we will probably be very helpful maybe to use our firsthand knowledge about how our team performs to provide that input, because ultimately, you know, org chart is a piece of paper and people are the ones who make it happen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Lane?
Yes, thank you. Well, you know, it's a very impressive report, especially given what last year was like. So congratulations to everyone and welcome to Bruce Kern, who I think joined us as well. When we talk about the prospect of reorganization, I think this is a timely way to do that. You know, we're not small potatoes anymore. And you start talking about the breadth of the position for the foundation director. And I have watched it wear out people because it's really two jobs. And so I think this is a really good time to take a look at what the new, what might be the best approach to take here. I do want to say that I am really pleased that with the decision that was made to have your first big capital campaign focus on Tilden. I know there were discussions about doing other locations, but Tilden is indeed the park that people know about. And I think for us and the education center is certainly not what it could be. You know, it's works, but it could work so much better. So I'm really pleased that the board continues to take a look at that, and I would love to see it get off the ground. And then I just want to say that I do know from other people talking about park foundations that we're looked to as the one that has the best practices and has been most successful. And so that always is rewarding to me to know. And then I want to thank Colin for bringing me that Headlands beer, particularly the Las Trampas beer. And my one of my sons, who is a Guinness drinker, likes this hazy IPA too. So I would say that's a compliment, because usually he just goes straight for the Irish beer. All right, I think that is my list, and I do want to thank the board for their work on this. We're delighted to have them supporting the Park District, and of course to thank Carol for being our queen here. So we're definitely going to miss you, Carol.
Well, thank you, Director Lane. I'm going to run out and go get some of that Las Trampas brew, actually. Yeah. Since everybody's raving about it. But I want to say it's been my pleasure to serve as the executive director of the foundation. It's been a wonderful growth opportunity for me personally, as well as for the foundation to get more in line with what the district's needs are. And with the direction of the general manager, and Sabrina will play that role, obviously, in terms of helping to direct the foundation going forward with our board. And I'm not, you know, I'm retiring, but I'm not going away. I'm going to just turn into a volunteer, and probably you might see me volunteering for the capital campaign, because I have so much just love and devotion for that center. But thanks for all your well wishes. I appreciate it. I'm not leaving quite yet, but you know, I think a couple of months will go by quickly. And the legacy that this collaboration has done for the East Bay, particularly, I think is superlative and a great model, as you said, Director Lane, for other foundations. And, going forward, I hope that, I not hope, but I know that, the love and affection for parks is going to continue, and hopefully the foundation can find its way into the hearts and pocketbooks of many of those newcomers that come to our parks, so that they can help us fund programs and initiatives that benefit those that don't have access or as much access to our regional parks. So thanks very much, and thanks for listening to our successful year.
I'm really looking forward to working with your board, Carol. I enjoyed the get to know each other session we had last month. It's a wonderful board, really good people to work with, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Would you please give our best wishes to Juliana? She's a little under the weather, and I want her to know we're thinking of her, and hope she's feeling a lot better soon. Becky, are there any public comments on this agenda item? I didn't see any.
President Coffey, I have no public comments on this agenda item.
Okay, then let's move on. We have the item 3, little beyond our time. We're doing okay though. Trail User Working Group update, and we have a staff presentation and recommendation for referral of the follow-up to the Trail Users Working Group to the Park Advisory Committee. This will be presented by Christina Kelcher and Brian Holt.
Thank you, Director Coffey and members of the board committee. I am Christina Kelchner, Assistant General Manager of Acquisition, Stewardship and Development here at the Park District. And I will be joined by my colleague, Brian Holt, our Chief of Planning and Trails and GIS, to give the board and the community an update on the Trail User Working Group and trail use conversations in general here at the Park District. So let me just start by reminding everyone, as the board is well aware, that since the onset of the pandemic in 2020, park visitation has really skyrocketed. And since COVID, that visitation has increased to over 25 million every year. And to put that in perspective a little bit, the Park District receives 8 times more visitors than the entire population of the East Bay, based on the 2020 census. So 8 times more than people live in the East Bay. That's how many visitors we get each year. And the parks get more visitors than the total annual visitation combined of Napa Valley, Monterey County, and Yosemite. So this is a significant volume of visitation and visitors that the parks are receiving, which is wonderful. That's why we're here, to invite people to enjoy open space and to protect also the natural resources. So there's a lot of demand for trails, and there's a lot of demand for many different user groups for more trail access. And to try to continue to meet that demand, the Park District has continued to add new parklands. So in the last 25 years, the Park District has acquired and added over 60,000 acres, or almost 60,000 acres, to our parkland. So a significant expansion. However, during that time of the same 25-year period, only 13 miles of new trails have been constructed. And the Park District estimates that we have over 1,250 miles of trails. So during that past 25 years, we've only constructed actually 13 miles of new trails. And to be specific, we have opened some fire roads, existing fire roads or maintenance roads, for use as trails, but we have done very little in the way of constructing new natural surface trails. And that's important because new trails can be designed, they're purpose-built trails. They can be designed to be environmentally sustainable, sustainable in terms of the maintenance required, and also designed for the user experience. So we have not done a lot of that here at the Park District. There are many reasons for that, but one of the chief reasons is the ongoing disagreement among stakeholders about how to build those trails, who gets to use those trails, where is a multi-use trail appropriate, and how do we build a system that's really going to work for everyone. So to try to address that ongoing disagreement and conversation in the community, back in 2019, the Park District's Board of Directors held a workshop that was focused on trail use, specifically on new trails, planning for new trails within our parklands, and how could we plan for that in a way that was going to work for everyone. Out of that workshop, which was very well attended, I think we had 65 folks come and give us very thoughtful and passionate comments on that. And so out of that workshop, the Board of Directors directed staff to convene a working group of trail users that would have a lot of different perspectives, so that working group could come together and share with each other their perspectives, hear from each other, and start to try to find areas of collaboration to move the conversation forward. So that has been happening. That's what we're here to provide an update on today. The Trail User Working Group did meet several times, and there were some areas of broad consensus, I would say, and really broadly, everyone is interested in seeing more trails, more trail access, expanded access, opening our properties that are not yet open to the public, what we call our land bank properties. And there's a shared interest in just additional access. There was also shared interest in seeing the Park District doing some updating to our strategic planning efforts to look at the district as a whole, which we did in our 2013 master plan, but there's some interest in seeing that updated so that we can look at the system overall. So there were some very broad areas of consensus. However, there still remain several areas of disagreement. And one of the most significant areas of disagreement relates to the suitability of shared use trails, multi-use trails, natural surface trails, and the suitability for mountain biking on those trails. And so that has we've kind of zeroed in on that, I think, as an area that brings the biggest area of disagreement. And so what we'd like to do is ask the Park Advisory Committee, which is made up, of course, of several leaders from around the community, to take up these issues and work with some of these questions. So the Park District, we're committed to continuing this conversation and to bring in all perspectives and really working with the community on the path forward. So there has been an increase in visitation, as I mentioned, and mountain biking is no exception. According to trail counters and the sales of bikes, mountain biking during COVID increased anywhere from 150 to 500%. So there's been really a huge increase in the interest in mountain biking nationwide. And there has been a lot of interest in mountain biking, including some local news recently regarding some activities in Pleasanton Ridge, where there was a user-created trail that Park District had concerns about the safety of the users, the mountain bikers who were using that trail. The trail had been there for many years. There'd been some injuries, and park staff was concerned about the safety on that trail. And there was some enforcement action to try to protect folks. And then there was some organization from the mountain biking community to get their message out to demand more access. So you may have seen some of that on the local news. Park District members of the board and staff are very aware of that, and pleased to be able to be moving this conversation forward with the board and the PAC. The Park District has been working specifically at Pleasanton Ridge for many years to expand access there. Back in 2012, the Park District adopted a land use plan that called for additional trails at Pleasanton Ridge. And we're happy to say that we're finally in construction on that. We expect that the first 1.5 miles of new trails at Pleasanton Ridge is expected to open later this year. So watch for that at Pleasanton Ridge. And finally, I just want to say a huge thank you to the members of the Trail User Working Group for volunteering their time. It's not always been easy. It's not always been comfortable, but these are exactly the kinds of conversations that we need to have frank discussions, get all the issues on the table, and so we can start to come together and find a path forward for these issues. So thank you to all the volunteers, and we look forward to continuing to work with the community on these questions. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Brian Holt, our Chief of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I am Brian Holt, Chief of Planning, Trails, and GIS, and I, along with our Trails Program Manager, Sean Dugan, and Principal Planner Devin Reef, have led the sort of convening and the facilitation of the Trail User Working Group. So I will give you a bit of a summary here. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, Trail User Working Group. I do want to echo Christina's thanks to the members of the Trail User Working Group. This was really quite an ask of volunteers to commit as much time and really to dive into the minutia and a long history in this conversation. Of course, you know, there's some people who have been involved in this conversation for a very long time and have very strongly held positions and passions about it. And we also were really interested in trying to bring in new voices to the conversation. We wanted to make sure that we had, you know, youth voices and from different inclusive communities and the disability community and others who perhaps might be new to some of the trail issues. So we'll talk a bit more about that further, but did just want to thank all of the Trail User Working Groups. I was struck, I have this plaque that's on my wall here in my office. Edward Abbey is an author and a conservationist, was an author and a conservationist, and is a bit of a hero of mine. And this quote sort of strikes me: "May your trails be crooked, winding, lonesome, dangerous, leading to the most amazing view." And I really think, with the exception of the dangerous part, I really think this is what most trail users are seeking. They're seeking a crooked, winding, sort of private, lonesome sort of experience. A lot of our trails are not as lonesome as they can be because they're getting crowded. And as we've heard, and you will hear today, there are concerns about trail safety. And certainly there are users who do seek a dangerous element on the trails, but that is really where a lot of the conversation comes down. You'll hear concerns, and there's concerns about natural resource management. I do want to say, of course, every trail that we work on goes through an extensive environmental review and permitting process. So that's something that we're always concerned about. We're always concerned about cultural resources. We're concerned about siting. And so it really seems a lot of the issue comes down to the danger, trail safety on our trails. So with that, we pulled together the Trail User Working Group to really address some of those concerns about trail conflict, to understand the interests of all trail users. As I mentioned, you know, we hear from some of our stakeholders more than others, and we want to try to hear from all of our trail users. What do other users seek? And I say this often, I do believe that the best protection of our resources in parks is to build and maintain a trail system that users want to use. So this is to facilitate sustainable trail development and resource protection. And just as a bit of an anecdote, we heard about the rogue trails in Pleasanton Ridge, and there's a number of rogue trails in some of our other parks. We did a bit of an analysis and looked at, say, DelVal, where there are a number of user-created trails, versus parks where we have purpose-built trails like Crockett Hills. And what we found is that you don't see the bootleg trails being created in Crockett Hills. The users are satisfied using the trails that have been out there. So that's something that, you know, we're always thinking about when we're talking about trails, is how can we direct people where they want to go, and more importantly, how do we direct people from where we don't want them to go? How do we keep them away from those resources that we're really concerned about? So the board is aware, but we have the 2013 master plan policy, which really seeks to expand our unpaved multi-use trail system as we add new acreage and new parks. And then we also have a policy that trails will be designed and designated to accommodate either single or multiple users as appropriate based on location. So these are our guiding policies. And then I'll just remind the board, we also have Ordinance 38, which stipulates that bike access is not permitted on trails below 8 feet in width. So as we've added over 57,000 acres of parkland since 1995, significant amount of land, we've only been able to construct 13 miles. And the vast majority of those were in Crockett Hills. And the reasons for that are multifold. Some of it's just the planning process, some of it's permitting. But as mentioned, a lot of it is coming to some agreement about these trails. We regularly hear about demands for increasing mountain bike access, but then we also hear concerns about mountain bike access on anything that's less than 8 feet in width. And that one thing we don't want to propose is the development of fire roads all over our properties. So we often have to propose connections that we believe the users are going to want to use, or will create themselves if we don't create them. And so we try to do those in with the lightest footprint as possible. And generally that means a trail that's less than 8 feet in width. So we pulled together the Trail User Working Group. And like I said, we really wanted diverse perspectives on this. So we did bring in the bicyclists, conservation organizations, the Sierra Club, California Native Plant Society, Audubon Society, and others. We reached out to the dog owner groups, equestrians, of course, hiking groups. There was a lot of interest in the organized hiking groups joining. We reached out to our land trust partners, John Muir Land Trust, Save Mount Diablo. We wanted to bring in those regional perspectives, the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is important because we want to try to make sure the Ridge Trail is managed in a consistent manner as it goes both through the East Bay Regional Park District, but into neighboring lands as well. Youth perspectives, the disabled community. We had members from our Park Advisory Committee, our Multicultural Advisory Committee, and inclusive communities. And appropriately, we also had somebody from the Board of Regional Parks Foundation join as well. So how this worked is, we met 7 times. This was all during COVID. So these meetings were all held over Zoom. We did bring in an outside facilitator. And if you recall, we had an outside facilitator for the 2019 workshop. He stayed with us throughout the process and helped facilitate the conversation. We heard all the different user perspectives, and we had sort of focused conversations at each meeting from the different users to provide their perspective. We prepared a draft report, and we're putting the final touches on that. It's a summary of a report of everything that we've heard, and that will be available soon. We also tried to do a bit of a poll to rate the users on sort of some of the different solutions that they would be willing to consider. Everything that we've done has been recorded, and notes have been taken, and there's really an exhaustive amount of information, and that will be all in the final report. It's also all posted on our website, and you can see behind the scenes we were taking notes in breakout groups and in other groups. So it's really a good opportunity to get all these perspectives. They're recorded and they're documented. So what we heard, overall, I would say a theme that we heard is predictability. If a group is going hiking on a trail that says bikes only, and they come across a big group of bikers, that's something that they don't want. Vice versa, bikers, when they come to a park, they want to have some predictability in terms of where they are permitted to ride and not. Some of the equestrians and others. So really just sort of a system that is predictable and not just sort of a free-for-all. Broad interest in access for all. I don't think anybody can disagree that Park District, we are public parks, and we need to work to provide for everybody to come and enjoy our parks. And we really need to address the interests of seniors, youth, people of color, and new trail users. Of course, as mentioned, Christina said we've received a lot of growth in the past couple of years, and new trail users who may not be as familiar with our trail rules or as accustomed to having grown up recreating in outdoor spaces. There was some interest in operation strategies. When we say operation strategies, we're saying things that don't necessarily require a shovel in the ground, but this may be things like putting up a sign, having one-way directional trails, or perhaps alternating days, different operation strategies that we could potentially explore. And AGM Jim O'Connor is here. He'll speak about that a little bit later. Trail user education, there's always some interest there. And then on the flip side, you know, there's interest from some in trail enforcement. I would also say there was some concern. There was some concern from others about the amount of trail enforcement. So I think there's a bit of a divide on trail enforcement in that folks recognize the need for trail enforcement, but we also don't want to over police our parks. Understanding of the importance of design, certainly avoiding those resources that we want to protect, providing the user experience that users seek, and a need to fully understand environmental impacts. You know, we do that. That's our first step, is to assess the natural resources and really understand what we're working with so we can understand what the environmental impacts are. A lot of concern about, you know, that we have a transparent and public process, which we're committed to. I think, you know, of course, there's times in the past where folks will say that hasn't happened, but certainly we're committed to a transparent and public process. And we've heard, you know, dozens of other suggestions. But again, there's topics for additional discussion, and a lot of this gets down to who can use the trails, and particularly mountain bike access and concerns with safety. So how do we address those concerns while still ensuring that we have an equitable and inclusive trail access? How do we work to close gaps in the regional trail network, like the Ridge Trail? And again, we're not talking about the Bay Trail here, because we are focused on the natural surface trails. These are the trails within our parks and not the paved pathways. There is, and it's undeniable, demand for mountain bike accessible trails. We've seen that, and we've seen it just recently very loudly. There's also concern in the equestrian community about protecting access for equestrians, and concerns that perhaps once you open up a park to mountain bike use, that equestrians may no longer wish to use that. So something to address there. We mentioned the operational controls, so if something to discuss if these are tools that we want to explore. And then, you know, we've tried to focus the conversation with the Trail User Working Group on how do we move forward in expanding access in our new parklands. But we can't have a conversation about trails and expanding access in new parklands without also having issues of the existing parklands and the existing trails come up. So there's a need to address that. System-wide trail planning, and I know you've seen the proposal for a district-wide trails master plan. So that's something that staff feels may be worthy for consideration. We're also concerned that that would be a very extensive, intensive, and very long process. So how do we continue to address the near term, the demand that's right in front of us now, while we work through what would be, like I say, a very extensive process? And again, how do we continue to ensure a transparent and public process? And again, we're guided by these two, you know, master plan policies, that we will expand our unpaid multi-use trail system, and that they will be designed to accommodate either single or multiple users as appropriate. So as Christina mentioned, we are looking to shift this project over, this discussion over to the Park Advisory Committee, where they can focus in on some more detailed discussions where these issues will come up. And these are plans that would be going to the Park Advisory Committee. So we're coming forward with our Roddy Ranch Public Access and Restoration Plan. And that would be going to the PAC. We're getting prepared to release our Southern Los Trompos land use plan to open up some 700 acres of southern Los Trampas that would connect to Danville and San Ramon. And that's really, we're kind of driven on that because it's a product of a settlement agreement that from a litigation from us and Sierra Club against the city of San Ramon, that we would move that forward. As mentioned, we want to look at a pilot project in Briones. You have seen the Wildcat Flow Trail proposal that has come forward from the community. So questions came up about whether these things were even viable. So we did include funding for initial studies to just explore pilot projects. I think, before we can even say whether the Wildcat Flow Trail is something that we even want to take out to the community, if it's something that we even want to discuss, those discussions, we really need to do those natural resource studies and cultural resource studies so we can really understand what the opportunities and constraints are. And then the trail user education campaign that you've heard about from Carol Johnson. So at this time, I think I want to invite Assistant General Manager Jim O'Connor to join and maybe speak a little bit more about what he's thinking about around the pilot projects.
Good afternoon, President Coffey, members of the committee. Jim O'Connor. I am your Assistant General Manager of Operations. I'll keep this very brief because I know there's several public speakers want to talk, but the concept behind the pilot program at Briones is to create a lab, essentially, a lab where we can test some operational and management strategies, such as what Brian's already talked about. Things like maybe potentially one-way trails. Maybe a trail is only suitable for uphill travel on a mountain bike. That way it gives some predictability, as Brian talks about, for hikers. So rather than having bikes speeding down a trail, they're climbing up the certain trail. So that's one type of strategy. There's what we call odd even days or alternating days, where bikes would be on potentially odd days only and even days would be non-bike days. So these are strategies that have been tried in different places throughout the country. Different agencies have tried them. And what we're trying to do is to have a concurrent strategy, meaning let's try some operational strategies and see how they work, test them out. And while we're going through potentially the process of developing a trails master plan, if the board decides to go in that direction. So there'd be a combination of short-term strategies to address the issue now, because I think we can all agree that these impacts, these trail user conflicts occur now. They exist now. Trail planning processes, such as a trails master planning process, are long-term. I've been through these processes in my prior agency. They do take some time to go through, but in the meantime, can we work within the parameters of our existing trail system and try to see if we can find strategies that work to relieve some of the user conflict that we have now within our trail system. So what we're planning to do is we're working internally with staff right now. We're going to have a public input process. We'd like to bring the draft version of this proposal to the PAC and gather additional input from the Park Advisory Committee, and then roll this out to the board, either through one of the subcommittees or to the full board when we're ready. Our intention is to have a plan hopefully in place, if everything goes well, by this June, so we can start this summer. So that's our intention. And if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I do just want to, and I'm just going to wrap up here real quick. So any questions that come up, I do just want to emphasize that, no matter what we do, there's going to be community engagement on this. So we're committed to working with our stakeholders, and I really hope that we can get equestrians and cyclists and the environmental community and others, out to Briones and talk about solutions. I do also want to emphasize that we have a lot of projects in the pipeline. And these are projects that have been through the environmental review process, have been approved by the board, have been through the public outreach process, and that we have, they go into this sort of, black hole because they go into the permitting agencies, right? And so that takes a long time to get permits. So part of what we've heard at Tyler Ranch and concerns from the community there is exactly that situation. They engaged in conversations on the Pleasant Pleasanton Ridge Land Use Plan in 2011. And then it took 10 years for us to start construction on the staging area. But we are still moving forward with developing the trails that were approved in the Pleasanton Ridge Land Use Plan. And we have our other land use plans that are out there that have been approved that we're trying to continue to get permitted and eventually move into construction. So any other bigger effort that we do, that wouldn't put pause on those projects that we're working on. We're still committed to working on those. So our recommendation that we're asking for you today is that the executive committee, that we direct the Park Advisory Committee to make part of their work plan a review of the final summary report to the Trail User Working Group, review these upcoming trails projects, and then provide any additional recommendations to the board regarding how to balance concerns for trail safety and environmental protection with the growing demand. And again, all of the Trail User Working Group information is available and accessible to the public, to the board, to everybody else on our Park District, on our website, on the Trail User Working Group. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions, and I do know we have a number of speakers today. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Director Rosario and Director Lane, but I want to ask something before I forget it, because I think I'm going to forget it. It's a very mundane question. You have the Wildcat Trail Flow proposal on that prior slide as something that's been budgeted. I don't, this is a brand new proposal. I think we all just saw it first time maybe a month ago, and I don't think there's a line item in our budget. Is that something that has been the ability to assign resources to studying those kind of concepts? Is that what's in our budget? Christina?
Correct, Director Coffey. Yes, there's a line item in the budget to study trail feasibility of some pilot trails and some new trail concepts. So it's a general category, but it is to study exactly these kinds of proposals.
All right, I just want to make sure, because as you know, I've been a proponent of pursuing conceptually flow trails like Crockett Hills in my ward. And since I've been on this board, I've been promoting the concept of developing more Crockett Hills type designated trails, including out in Contra Loma, where it's conceptually already in the land use plan out there, along with a disc golf course. These are lands that aren't sensitive habitat. That's reclamation land out at Contra Loma and elsewhere. So I just wanted to understand that conceptually we have resources to study these concepts and bring back options to the board as part of those studies. Okay, so with that, let us first bring it to the board for questions and comments, and then we'll take public comment. Director Rosario?
Great, thank you. Great report. And I wanted to echo Brian's and Christina's and comments on the people that participated in the Trail User Working Group. It was a lot of time, a lot of effort, and I very, very much appreciate those efforts. And so you mentioned that we've only built 13 miles of trail, but how many of Fire Road trails mileage have we opened up that has been opened up to the public?
It's been some time since we've had a new park open. So I would have to go back and look at that. But again, we have of those 57,000 acres that we have acquired, over 40,000 acres are land bank, and that means no public access. And that's not to say that all of those acres should be opened up to public access. There's a recognition that some properties should remain for resource protection. But again, we do have 40,000 acres of land bank property. So that's a significant amount of our acquisitions in the past 25 years.
Great, thank you. The reason I bring that up is because I think fire roads, bicyclists are, in particular, have access to fire roads, which gives them the ability to traverse many of our parks and see much more of our parks than most other users. So, I just wanted to address that. mountain bikers do have access to parks, although I'm sure that they want more single track, but they do have access to be able to traverse a lot more mileage of our parks via our fire road system.
And
But-
paid.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that.
Sure.
So the last park that we opened up was Vargas. And so you remember how long ago that was and
Yeah.
how difficult it was. And then our next big public access opening will be the Tyler Ranch that we work.
And then just basically just a comment. I really, I think the idea of a master trail master plan is, I think it's, I'm in favor of that. I think it's doable. And also having said that, agree, it's going to be intensive. It's going to be a long process as well. But I really like the idea of having pilot projects so that we can have something that we can hang our hats on, provide actual real-time data and experiences. My only question is the two that were noted, the two projects that are noted, Wildcat and Briones, are in Contra Costa County. We have, and so if there's a site in Alameda County, that would be good too. And of course, the caveat being with all these pilot projects is that for me and for many of my colleagues on the board is that endangered species and habitats take precedence over everything. And I think when I met with the folks over at to take a look at the site at Wildcat Canyon, I made that very clear that if there's an impact on endangered species and habitat, then it's a no-go. But if there's a minimal impact, that then it's a possibility. So I just, other than that, I think I hope we can do a dual I hope we can pursue a master trail plan and also these pilot projects to give us some real-time experiences. But well done. Well done.
Thank you, Dee. And I agree with you. Our existing parks and trails are teeming with bicycles. It's not like there's a user group out there that's somehow been excluded from our park system. Our focus is on a group of those who really enjoy mountain biking and want to use narrow dirt trails. So, I'm agreeing with you. There's a lot out there for bicycle use. And we've added many miles of paved trails and regional trails over the last number of years. I've attended a lot of those ribbon cuttings. Director Lane. You're muted. Yeah. There you go.
I had a chance to be at the PAC meeting when the trail user presentation was brought there by staff, and to hear their willingness to have this come to them. And I am really pleased that they're willing to do this. I want to be sure we are able to work with them to form what they are going to examine so that it is something that's doable by the group. So I think that's very important. And in looking at our recommendation today, I think we need to be sure we have some reference to the pilot projects that Mr. O'Connor talked about bringing to them. I'm not sure whether that precisely fits under what our recommendation is. So somebody might take a look at that as we go through this meeting. I too read the letter requesting a trail plan, and I certainly understand why the people who sent us that letter want us to do that. I've seen cities do master trail plans, and they do take forever. And then they also, when they start talking about where a trail might go, they stir up every pot in the world. And so from my vantage point, as one who was on the board when we adopted the master plan,
Yes.
I think we need, and I'm so pleased that that Brian pointed out the RFA 2, 3, and 4 assertions that appear in the master plan, because we have done the conceptual planning, and we have had unbelievable discussions, some of which were fairly acrimonious, leading up to the master plan. And so I think what we need to be doing is looking at what that master plan says. And of course, that's the general plan level. And we need to move to looking at projects that can actually be examined, evaluated, and that we can move forward with. The plan's 8 years old. And as Brian mentioned, we haven't come very far in that 8-year period. And I don't feel really positive when we have finally reached the point where we get the permits and we're able to open a park, when people all of a sudden come in and jump on us because they don't like what was produced out of the planning. So I think there's more to be discussed and more to be done. And we need to move forward on this. The number of people who have started using our parks in the last couple of years in whatever mode has increased by huge numbers. And we have got to get a grip on how we can share this wonderful resource with all of our users. And I am pleased that Trail Working Group has done all of that work and that they're still talking to one another. And I'm eager to see us move so that we indeed can have some good trail experience for all of our users. I am very enthusiastic about actually addressing setting up some trails for one user or another. And for those of us who are walkers, to have the assurance that we're not going to have a bike flying around the corner at us would be a very helpful thing. And I know that I am not alone in looking at that, but we need to also worry about our equestrians who are on a large, sometimes uncontrollable animal, and we have to protect those as well. So for me, safety and the resource are two important keys as I look at any of the changes and we move toward helping people use our parks in a satisfying way. So those are just a few of my thoughts that have built up after a while. And I did enjoy reviewing the master plan again. So thank you. And we'll hear from the public.
Yeah, well, let me jump in a bit. I couldn't agree with you more, Director Lane. It kind of triggered me as well. I went online last night and I read our 2013 master plan. And as you know, I was a member of the PAC at the time and very much involved in development of the 2013 master plan, because I saw that proposal that we got yesterday. I was scratching my head. Well, wait a minute, we have a master plan that is a comprehensive plan for trail planning and development. And I mentioned this the other day when I was talking to its author, Josh, is we spent quite a bit of time on that in 2013. And of course, we do our planning in terms of master planning holistically. You can't take out the trail elements of what we do in a master plan, looking at a vision for the next 10 years without also master planning for the parks and our general operations and such. One goes with the other. We are indeed a park system. We're not a park agency and we're not a trail agency or a municipality that does trails on the side. This is what we are. We are a park and trail operator and developer. And the master planning part of it did in 2013 take place holistically, altogether, integrated. I went through that plan last night and spent about 2 hours reading the trails elements of it. There's 159 pages. There are 354 references to trails, most of them perfunctory, but a lot of substantive trail planning. Brian just noted a few provisions in it. It seems to hold up well. I think you were saying that, Bev. It seems to have informed everything we have done, at least since I've been on the board, in terms of trail development and planning and implementation, and the approach we take that very much involves the overall master plan for the park system. So I'm all in favor of the concept that is presented of master planning for trails. I think it's part and parcel of the master plan for the park system, since it's an integral part of the system and integrated into the overall master plan. What I would like to do, and this is an aside, is maybe encourage management to start thinking about that, because the 10-year shelf life on the 2013 master plan is coming up. And my guess is COVID has diverted us from at least 2 years worth of planning and thinking about master planning. So it is nonetheless a good trigger for us to be thinking about that. I agree. My memory is it takes a year to prepare for processing master planning, and then it takes another year to do it. And so, we're a ways away from an integrated master plan for trails and parks being updated. I would like to hear any ideas proponents of master planning for trails have regarding the existing comprehensive master plan we have for our trails, where it is deficient, where it needs to be updated. And frankly, we have to do that with the entirety of the master plan over the next year or two to get that process underway. I very much support the staff recommendation that the natural, basically our task to the trail users working group be brought over and informed by that group to our park advisory committee. I think that's a very good vehicle for hearing this particular issue. And frankly, we need, with some urgency, options, we being the board of directors. I'm not forecasting conclusions and recommendations that I want to see. I just think we all need options, and there's some urgency to it. And it's not just the potential need to address mountain bike demands for designated trails. It's the overall impact that these new unprecedented volumes are having on us that I think Christina and Brian and Jim have touched on. We have a new urgency about us because of these unprecedented volumes arising from the pandemic. And we as board members have seen this almost every month. We're getting it in our email all the time. We have these urgent questions regarding the mountain bike issue. We have Briones and the high level of conflict out in Briones that has motivated staff to look at options for Briones and has led to the notion that we could try some pilot programs, which I think is a great idea and great to take to the pack. We have these flow trail concepts. I've been on the board advocating for further options with Crockett Hill type trails, because I think that has worked out there. There's downsides to it and there are upsides to it, and we could talk about that, but that's what we need to do. We need to look at that concept and look at other areas where we can develop a Crockett Hill style availability to the bicycling community. And the other one, and we're not really addressing it now, but need to, is e-bikes. Every time, in the parks all the time. There are a hell of a lot of e-bikes out in our parks that in theory aren't supposed to be there, and they're all over the trails. And my wife and I are in the market for some because we've taken some weekend outings where e-bikes have kind of resuscitated our interest in bicycling. It's phenomenal what is going on, and we couldn't have seen that in 2013. So we really need to address the e-bike issue. And again, each one of these I feel an urgency about because they're just all happening. We've got this huge volume increase and therefore these issues. And they all flow from the pandemic and these unique times we're living in. And we need to look at them. And as I said before, we as board members need options because we're going to keep having people coming at us with these issues. So we need options. And that's where I think, at least for a start, giving the PAC this particular issue flowing from the working group is a very good idea. And thank you for the presentation. That's my responses. And I seem to sense we're all at least on the same page in response to this presentation. And so we'll switch to listening to public comment, and then we can come back to the committee and digest the public comment. And Becky, I've seen a preliminary list of probably more, but I think we had about 10 speakers indicating before. That's a manageable group,
Yes.
3 minutes
Yes.
each.
Actually, President Coffey, so far I have 14 people wishing to make a public comment. I'd just like to remind our speakers, you have 3 minutes. When you have 15 seconds remaining, I will turn on my screen. The first speaker that I will call is Josh Sonnenfeld. After Josh, I will call on Jim Hansen.
Thank you, Becky.
Uh,
Director Lane, just a moment, please, Josh. Director Lane, you're on mute.
Oh, I just undid myself. I'm just wondering if we could ask people to try and stay to 2 minutes if possible.
Yeah, I think with that many speakers and a couple more hands of people who aren't on the list, I think what we should do is ask people to not be overly repetitive, and that's how we can conserve some time. If Josh is speaking for a group and I think he is, then there may be others of the group that might be able to augment what he says rather than repeating it or just, I agree with Josh, and Josh made a good point here and there. So, we have to kind of ad lib and manage our time, and either with try to get through in a couple of minutes if you can, folks, and otherwise try not to be repetitive. So let's move on to Josh. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, President Coffey, board members, Rosario Lane, General Manager Landreth, and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comment. My name is Josh Sonnenfeld. I'm a lifelong Bay Area resident, East Bay resident for over a decade, and longtime conservation advocate. I'm here today representing the California Native Plant Society, the Sierra Club, and 15 organizations that have sent you all a letter, including Greenbelt Alliance, Golden Gate Audubon Society, Ohlone Audubon Society, Mount Diablo Audubon Society, Save Mount Diablo, Orinda Hiking Club, San Ramon Valley Horsemen's Association, Alameda Creek Alliance, California State Horsemen's Association Region 5, the Regional Parks Association, the Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation, Mission Peak Conservancy, and Safe Trails and Environmental Protection, a number of which you'll be hearing from following me. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity. Many members of our group have been part of the Trail Users Working Group and appreciated the opportunity to engage with other stakeholders. We're here today to urge the Park District to develop a Trails Master Plan as a constructive next step following the Trail Users Working Group. The intention of this plan is to really provide a holistic opportunity to plan the growth of trails within East Bay Park District, to address the need of each user group and appropriately minimizing conflict and impacts on natural resources, and to assess and develop a strategy for advancing universal access to the outdoors in alignment with the state's Outdoor for All initiative. A lot has changed in 8 years since the district developed its master plan. During presentations today, we've heard about skyrocketing use within our parks, We've heard about new types of use and increased uses from different user groups. And we've also heard about increased conflicts, as well as, there is an increasing demand and urgency to ensure access for all, and interest at the state and federal level in advancing outdoor access for all, in addition to new funding for pursuing such efforts. So we really believe that planning at this detailed level, as it relates to focusing on trails in particular, can really help stakeholders avoid getting into the types of conflicts that we experience at a park by park and trail by trail basis, so that we can view the park district as a whole and be able to make trade-offs. Where is it appropriate to put new trails, whether that's flow trails or other mountain bike trails? Where is it appropriate to just have hiking trails? And what are areas that should be that are too sensitive for environmental resources that should not have trails? And if we can think about that at a district-wide level, it makes it easier to do those trade-offs that might be really challenging in a park-by-park basis. So the real hope here is that we can find a way to get out of this logjam and make some real progress in increasing access and protecting our natural resources. And I also do want to recognize, many members of our group, there is an understanding and appreciation that there is a sense of urgency. We do think a trail master plan is the right step to do this holistic level of planning, but we also understand we need to do some pilot projects. And our request would be to pursue pilot projects in those areas where we can find consensus and agreement that pilot projects make sense. Some areas might be more challenging than others from a resource protection or from user protection. So we're very interested in getting together and bringing stakeholders together to try to determine what pilot projects make sense and to be as constructive as we can with that process.
Okay, sir, you have a few seconds left. If you don't mind wrapping it up, please. Thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is, there's a lot of issues involved here. We've heard about flow trails, e-bikes, strategies for opening up new land-based properties, environmental protection. This is really far beyond the scope of what one committee should really be entrusted to do. So while we very much appreciate the role of the PAC and look forward to their engagement, we really do feel like a Trails Master Plan is the best approach to holistically address these issues, in addition to some pilots. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Jim Hansen? Mr. Hansen, are you still on the line?
Yes.
Okay, you're up.
Great. Thank you very much. Hello, President Coffey, Board Member Lane, and Board Member Rosario, and General Manager Landreth. My name is Jim Hansen, Conservation Chair for California Plant Site East Bay. I attended and participate in each one of the Trail Users Working Group meetings over the last year and a half. I hike, I bicycle. We support the proposal for the East Bay Regional Park District to develop a district-wide Trails Master Plan. Sometimes this may seem as just another plan. We've all experienced this. And other times, the plan helps provide the necessary guidance and resolution. And that's why a Trails Master Plan is needed today, to facilitate movement forward. The suggested action before you is to recommend mostly focusing on a growing demand for mountain bike access. And as a number of you have commented, from what I've observed and what's in the data, a bigger perspective is called for by the district for the immediate and long term. I know we see park staging area lots overflow onto surrounding streets, and most of those are without bike carriers, and that actually coincides with the 2019-20 district survey of over 8,000 folks, which pointed to extensive and growing use of trails by people for walking, mobility assisted, young and seasoned equestrians, people with their dogs, runners, families representing all diverse Bay Area communities wishing to be outdoors and on the trails. This is only to say that a full scope of our trail user population needs to be involved and included, and another reason for a Trails Master Plan. I've heard it said that it feels like the same trail issues we've been dealing with are, it's been around for a long time, but I suggest we may want to consider that because many things point to this being a new day and looking forward and planning for what's in front of us now. In the last 10 years, Bay Area population growth has outpaced both California and the US. We're now nearly to 8 million people. All trail uses are increasing. A new technology has been mentioned. E-mountain bikes are showing up in many places. Worldwide and locally, our flora and fauna are being stressed by climate change, and trail policy affects that. Speaking of scope and perspective, in addition to the Park Advisory Committee, we think we have to bring in all stakeholders in trail planning. And when it comes to pilot projects, they would be part of and serve a trail master plan process to explore new ideas. And an important point, any pilot project does need to start by engaging all stakeholders in the objectives, location, as well as the ongoing review of what's being learned. This is
Sir, if you can wrap it up, you have a few more seconds.
Thank you. The same thing happened with the wildfire plan. It followed through on the broad 2013 master plan goals, or it certainly serves that purpose. Please consider pursuing a master plan for both the immediate and the long term. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is thank you. Our next speaker is Sally DeBecker, and then after Sally, I will call on Virginia Reinhardt.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Sally DeBecker, and hello. Oh dear. I think everything's all right, but let me just make sure. Yeah. Thank you very much. Hello, President Coffey and executive board members. As I said, my name is Sally DeBecker, and I am president of the California Native Plant Society, the East Bay chapter, which represents Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And as you know, we signed on to the proposal to have a master plan for trails. So obviously I'm in support of the comments that the previous two speakers had made. An important point that I would like to make is that we have over 1,000 members, and these are people who actively use trails and for whom this really is an important issue. And for those reasons, we really support examining it carefully through use of a trail master plan, trail use master plan. We're thrilled that so many people use the park, and we feel that the entire organization truly feels that we need a plan because we need to identify the overall goals and strategies for the district's trails, and we need to come up with visions and strategies for each of the areas that you represent. I will yield the rest of my time. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about the issue.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay, Virginia Reinhardt.
Hi, hello, President Coffey and all of the board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you to the board and staff for all that you do to steward our parks. My name is Virginia Reinhardt. I am the director of the Sierra Club's San Francisco Bay chapter, which represents 35,000 members in Alameda, Contra Costa, San Francisco, and Marin counties. And our members include hikers, mountain bikers, equestrians, bird watchers, and park users of all kinds who want safe and positive experiences in their parks. I'm also an avid park user myself, though since I have little kids, most of my time is spent at the little farm these days. But I am here, as you know, to express support for the proposal for the district-wide Trails Master Plan. And I don't want to repeat what others have said, but I will add that I would hope that a good Trails Master Plan could draw on a real robust data-based planning process that would include such things as an audit of outdoor access for all East Bay communities to ensure real equity, deep stakeholder engagement, and also, of course, detailed biological surveys. So I'll yield the rest of my time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. That's helpful, Virginia. Becky?
Okay, Miss Helen Burke, and after Helen, I will call on Amelia Marshall. Helen, are you here? Okay. If not, Amelia Marshall.
Hi, everyone. Let's see if I can start my video here. Okay. I will just go on audio. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful presentations. Okay, here we go. Thank you for the wonderful presentations. Without trying to be repetitive here, Director Coffey is spot on that the e-bike ubiquity was totally not anticipated in the master plan of 2013. If you look on page 63, where the various policies were elucidated, it says specifically that the policies are intended for non-motorized use. Now we have e-bikes. I clocked one going 37 miles per hour. This is kind of worrisome, especially for us equestrians. I feel very honored to have been able to serve on the Trail Users Working Group as an equestrian advocate. All the trails currently on the drawing board in the planning department are now of the narrow multi-use type, and that was of course the main area where the TWIG failed to reach consensus. You will notice on item C7 in the results of the survey that the district conducted amongst us stakeholders that a majority, 62% of people agreed with the premise the district should consider disallowing bikes on trails less than 8 feet wide. I'll repeat that. That majority of stakeholders agree with that premise. Obviously, our cyclist advocates did not agree with that premise. So now we have passionate bicycle advocates approaching the district on a piecemeal basis to develop flow trails in Wildcat Canyon, Briones, and elsewhere. And hey, it may be a great idea to have the cyclists with their stimulation, satisfying trail experiences on separate trails from the equestrians and the hikers, but it's not an efficient use of staff time to do that, to decide on that basis. That's why I'm in favor of the master plan for trails that has been mentioned. I'm concerned about the PAC. I wonder if they're equipped to resolve the questions that the TWIG could not resolve over the course of a year and a half of meetings. I'm also concerned that there
Ma'am, if you can wrap it up.
There are no equestrians currently sitting on the PAC. Thank you, all of you, for all you do in the parks, and I hope we can get going on the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia.
Pam Young, and after Pam, I will call on Amelia Wilson.
Hi, thank you very much for this opportunity. Honorable board members and Park District leadership and staff, thanks for hearing my commenting on behalf of Golden Gate Audubon Society. At issue is the status of the narrow trail access. We're very concerned about the intense kind of recreation that occurs on a narrow trail, and we respectfully assert that the statement that there's broad support for adding new trails, we feel that adding new trails is premature. We're very concerned about the condition of the parks district-wide, and we support the district's commitment to protect habitat and wildlife both now and for the future. And we all enjoy our parks, trails, and the natural beauty, but we must remember that access to the trails is a privilege, not a right, and some intensive trail activities damage the trails and parks more than others. So then the question is, what is the schedule and cost for repairing all the trail damage? And will that happen before adding new trails? Keep in mind, mountain bikes have access to 800 miles of district trails, 80% of all the trails and roads district-wide, which is the most mountain bike trail access of any park in the country. Now the mountain bikers want to add Wildcat Canyon's Mizzou Trail. This trail habitat supports over 50 grassland species, and grassland habitat and the associated birds have suffered more extreme losses than any other land ecosystem in North America. You can go up there and see rare declining species like grasshopper sparrows and western meadowlarks. So adding a new trail is kind of piecemeal, and we definitely support the proposed district-wide trail master plan. And we just want to add that we also very much support the ecological assessments that have begun. And we recommend that those high value habitat assessments make sufficient progress before talk of new trails. We certainly support a pilot project. That's a great idea. And we also, as I say, really want to see that district-wide trail master plan to avoid unintended consequences and reduce conflict, have everybody on board at a transparent process, which the park is so good at managing. And thank you all very much for your hard work and for letting us speak on this.
Thank you, Pam. The next speaker, Amelia Wilson, and after Amelia, I will call on Austin McInerney.
Where's Mimi? There's Mimi. You're on mute, Mimi.
Board members and staff, I thank you today for the opportunity to add my 2 cents to this. I'm Amelia Wilson. I'm chairman of the Regional Parks Association and the same age as the Park District. So I come from a particularly sensitive area of age and loss of hearing in the conflicts that are occurring on the trails. I support, and the board of the RPA also supports the letter of today that came to you concerning our asking for a trails master plan. If it would speed up the process, change the name, not necessarily a master plan, but an overreaching thing that updates what has happened since 2013 even. We believe that's very important. And also I would like to add that a pilot project ought to be done in a park that's a little more cramped than someplace like Crockett Hills, where the destruction of road trails and heavy metropolitan use is, rather than the wide open spaces. I respectfully submit to the executive committee that they endorse some sort of master trail and set in motion the formation of that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi.
Austin McInerney, are you here? And after Austin, I will call on Bob Cooper. And then after Bob Cooper, I will call on Kelly Abreu.
Yeah, hello, I'm here. Dear East Bay Regional Park District Executive Committee. As a participant in the recently completed Trail User Working Group representing mountain bikers and specifically youth cyclists who participate on organized middle and high school cycling clubs under the mentorship of trained coaches, I'm speaking today to share relevant information. Specifically, considering the recently submitted letter from a coalition of groups who you've heard many of them just now, some of which participate in the Trail User Working Group, requesting a trail master plan be developed before new trails are constructed. I want the executive committee and folks on this call to know the following. The Bicycle Trails Council of the East Bay and local interscholastic mountain bike clubs support landscape level planning and recommended that this be undertaken in our presentation to the Trail User Working Group 1 year ago this month. However, we find it very peculiar that this coalition who just submitted the request for a similar study did not reach out to us to sign on to this letter, especially knowing that we had in fact originally proposed a similar study. If this group, spearheaded by the Sierra Club, is trying to build an effective coalition benefiting all trail stakeholders, why have they not reached out to us, nor the Bay Area Ridge Trail, nor several other Trail User Working Groups members who have expressed support for more access? Despite this exclusion, we'd be interested in discussion of how we, others from the Trail User Working Group, and other non-represented stakeholders from disadvantaged communities would contribute and participate in and benefit from yet another study. While a trail master plan could be helpful, it should not delay progress on the dire need for new trails and utilization of proven management techniques to address the overcrowding and inequitable access to quality and safely constructed trails, not fire roads, for the increasing number of responsible cyclists and all trail users. As the protest at Pleasanton Ridge last week demonstrated, many cyclists are extremely frustrated that only 13 miles of new trails have been opened on East Bay Regional Park land since 1995, while trail use has exploded and almost 60,000 acres of new lands have been acquired. In closing, I'm glad to learn today that the Park Foundation has $15 million in funds in the bank and respectfully request that some of these funds be expended on designing and constructing new trails and recreational amenities to serve the over 25 million visitors to the parks each year. Enough studies, it's time for action. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Bob Cooper, after Bob Cooper, Kelly Abreu, and after Kelly Abreu, I'll call on Simone Nagion de la Stang.
Let's see, am I on? Thank you for this opportunity to address my favorite park. I'm Bob Cooper, an equestrian who has been riding in the parks since 1974. Last Sunday, while two of us were riding in Tilden Park, we watched a large dog trying to get to our horses drag its owner off her feet. Fortunately, prone on the grass, she held on and we left. Too many dogs behave badly in the park, and dog owners need additional training to handle them. Mountain bicyclists relentlessly lobby for greater trail access. Over the years, I have witnessed many close calls with bicycles traveling too fast and seen many bicycles on no bike trails. Almost all mountain bike websites forget to tell bicyclists to only ride trails that allow bikes. All narrow trails in the parks have mountain bike tracks on them. Mountain bicyclists need help in policing their own. The proposed narrow multi-use trails are a bad idea. However, hikers and equestrians deserve trails where there are no bikes, and mountain bikes deserve flow trails for their own use. Mountain bikes have caused, in my opinion at least, extensive damage to the parks and renegade trails that make parks look like a motocross courses. In Briones and Pleasanton Ridge parks, I have discovered extensive bike play areas, which are also ugly. I'm sure there are other similar areas in other parks. The park needs to put more staff, not necessarily officers, out on the trail for several reasons. One, to show presence. Two, help interact and educate users. Three, check that rules are followed. Four, write tickets when necessary. Such lack of presence allows anyone to do what they please with no consequences. I wish the Park Advisory Committee luck in finding a distinct wide consensus, district-wide consensus on trail issues. My understanding is that there is no longer a horse person on the pack. This should be corrected quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Kelly Abreu.
Okay. Fine. Okay, thank you. My video isn't working because it's been disabled by the host. All right. The official messages are confused and disjointed. Today we heard the Acquisition Stewardship Development Department say that the user safety is the issue at Pleasanton Ridge. But just last week, a contradictory park spokesperson stood right there at Pleasanton Ridge and spoke on camera to the TV station KPIX5, said that the issue is environmental protection, okay? Those are two different things, and they're a little bit contradictory. There's almost then there's this myth that we heard today about the lonesome visitor seeking solitude. Over here at Mission Peak, we've got a little bit of experience with that. We hear that all the time, and we have lots of lonesome trails with that are fairly empty. One of them starts at Ohlone College, not totally empty. Others are little known. They're on the maps, but nobody's on the trails. And what we learn is that people are social creatures, And people like, there's a safety in numbers, and you find a large congregation of people that want to go together. They feel safer that way. Visitors are not seeking solitude, many of them. And then there's this thing that we hear today, this concept that about new trails. You know, if you look back in history at all these trails, almost none of them have been bulldozed and built by the park district. The new trail is a myth. It's a unicorn. There were 57,000 acres in this district in 1984. 68,000 have been added since 1984. Where did they get their trails? They don't build trails on these 68,000 acres. Those are almost all repurposed and recycled ranch roads, or fire roads, if you want to call them that. So this district needs quantitative data, figure out which parks and which trails are teeming with bicyclists. Where are the hikers, bikers, and horses congregating? Where is the unmet demand precisely? Also, this idea of trail user. A user it goes with the concept of depleting the resource. These are not users. These are park visitors. The parks are a public good, a social good, a collective good. These goods are shared and non-exclusive and non-rivalrous and non-depletable. Thank you.
Okay, I have Simone, and after Simone, I will call on William Uragi.
Hi, thank you so much. So my name is Simone Najon de Leighton. I am the Senior Trail Planner at the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. And I think that many of you are aware of who we are because East Bay Regional Parks District is one of our greatest supporters and partners, but we're a 550-mile regional planned multi-use trail. And about 60 of our miles right now are in East Bay Parks, and we have about 18 more planned miles before we're completed. And after participating in this trail user working group over the past year and a half, it is so clear that there is such a need for increased access to our parks. And we know that there's an all-time high demand. We just wanted to let you know that we support the district in undertaking a trails master plan process to address this need at the landscape scale and identify a path forward to improve both equitable and responsible trail access to our parks. We work with many other jurisdictions around the region that have implemented similar tools, such as Santa Clara County Parks, to help their trail development program and have seen successes in this. If this were to occur, this master planning process, we would urge that both regional trails, such as the Ridge Trail, and connectivity for all trail use types are prioritized. All trail users, and particularly cyclists, which I've heard differing opinions, but in the facts we learned at the Trail User Working Group, they are the most restricted use group on all of our natural surface trails in East Bay Parks. They should be able to connect between this excellent string of parks that we've built. Second, I think it is so important to have meaningful engagement of BIPOCs, youth, supporters of public access, and broader voices of East Bay residents. This should be a vital part of this effort. I just want to note that many of these voices are not represented here today, and were not represented, I think, in that letter for that was advocating for a Trails Master Plan. And then finally, wanted to say that while we support the development of this plan, we do not support any pause or delay in the planning or construction of current and long planned projects while the plan is being developed. We stand strongly on that. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your and your staff's work.
Thank you. William Uragi?
Bill?
William?
There's Bill.
Still can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Bill. No.
Okay, we still can't hear you.
He's not muted. Now he's muted. Now he's off.
I think there's an error on his end. Okay, if you'd like, sir, you are more than welcome to submit a written comment on this item, and I will make sure to forward it to the committee and to staff. You have that information, it's on the agenda. And President Coffey, as of now, I have no one else on the list. There was one individual by the name of Mark Miller who indicated he wanted to make a public comment, but I see that he dropped off the line. And that's all that I have.
How about Helen? I don't have the whole list. Did Helen come on?
Helen Burke did not show up.
All right. And Bill, if you get it working, let us know. It's probably a setting on your computer. With that, let me come back to the committee. We have a staff recommendation, and we're going to work toward a motion on that staff recommendation. But first, I want to ask for comments, further comments from the committee. Director Rosario.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank all the people that spoke today. Also, I just wanted to say I support both what my colleagues have said on the previously, and especially Beverly, the insight onto the master plan. I'm all for I'm an advocate for the master plan, because I know that we have to do the master plan in a couple of years, and I thought this would just be a exactly what you said, is a review of the existing master plan, and then highlight the what's needed to address the situations that we see ourselves now. Yeah, I think that's it. Some really good points brought out. Oh, I also wanted to, we probably should amend per what Director Lane said about including pilot projects in the recommendation. I think that's a good idea. I'm done.
Bev, do you have some further comments? Do you want to elaborate on what Dee was just raising with the suggestion that there be specific projects involved in this referral?
Well, I enjoyed listening to the public comments. I think I have heard some of them before, actually. And what I do think we have a good recommendation here, and what I'd like to do is just, when we say direct the park advisory committee, I think we should add a C and ask that they review the pilot projects brought to them. That would be item C.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, and I'm tempted to add study the concept of flow trails and study the concept of e-bikes. I hesitate to do that because I don't know that staff is ready to incorporate it, and it's sort of like the overall master planning process. There's so much work that goes into prepping for it that I don't want to pile it up all now. I'll support the addition of having the PAC look at the pilot proposals, because I think that's ready to go. I get the sense from Jim O'Connor that he can get that to the PAC right away. I'm not so sure on broader issues. So maybe this can be done in phases. And so I'll agree and support the recommendation with the added C, as Director Lane has suggested. I just want to say, I appreciate the input and the struggle to deal with these issues in a fair and equitable way. I didn't hear a lot that undermines my faith in the present master plan from 2013 and its comprehensive addressing of trail development. I didn't hear anything that undermines my real faith that it's remains a good informative source for our planning. And so, but aside from the obvious that I pointed out, the volumes are off the charts, and we have this new phenomenon of e-bikes that need to be addressed, and we may need to address more issues either through the PAC or directly through us to deal with the current urgencies around these issues. None of us oppose and all of us embrace the master planning concept. We're ingrained enough in park district planning and the almost the basic charter status our master plan has with how we pursue what we do with parks and trails. The tension here is the suggestion that we defer the staff recommendation, the referral of the working groups discussion to the PAC. Do we delay that? I mean, we don't want to do that. We don't want to set aside all that effort to be subsumed in a process that we all know from personal experience takes at least a couple of years. And so, that's where the tension is. And I think that's where at least I feel a bit of resistance to that suggestion. So I think we should move forward with this. And I think the committee is very interested, given the shelf life on the existing master plan, is where the staff think we're going to take up that huge project of master planning to ultimately update or replace the 2013 plan. And as everyone said from my colleagues, the first place we start is determining what exactly in the existing plan needs to be updated, or do we have a strong foundation to start with? So let's get that on the exec committee agenda and pursue it, because we all support that concept. And it was very well set forth in the proposal we received. But again, there is that tension about immediate studies and work on some more immediate issues that I think we're going to address now. Is there a motion to support the staff recommendation as augmented by Director Lane with her item C?
So I'll make that motion, with C being review pilot operational projects on trails. So we're talking specifically about projects coming out of operations.
Thank you. And Director Rosario seconds.
Second.
And would the recording secretary take the roll, please?
Yes. President Coffey?
Aye.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Rosario?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. And I will just, for the record, the minutes will reflect the change in the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Becky. And that brings us, again, thank you all for all the time you spent with us and the input that we've received. All is going to be contributing to our ongoing efforts on these issues. We all appreciate it. And stand ready to interact with all of you folks as you desire individually.
Okay.
The next item is public comments, and these are for public comments that were not on our agenda today. Becky, do we have any? I don't think I saw any email.
Kelly Abreu indicated to me that he would like to make a public comment. Kelly, I will give you.
Colin, I need to leave now. And
all
so
right.
I'm going. Bye.
Bye-bye. Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The last user group meeting, which is, these aren't really users, these are park visitors because parks are not really a depletable resource. A user group is not the only way to measure and deal with customer needs, assess customer needs. There's a lot of other ways. You can hire politicians and have politicians get elected by voters. Kaiser Permanente has a large user base, maybe even larger than the Park District. And they don't just listen to focus groups, although I'm sure they have them. They don't just look at the revenue that they derive from insurance premiums. Maybe some of you are familiar with the healthcare industry and with hospitals. They have electronic health records that measure the member outcomes, and they do extensive scientific surveys that look at that seek to understand and measure member satisfaction. So all of that is done in a very, very careful way to get in touch with their customer base, and that's why when you all heard about a demonstration somewhere with 100 people were going to be gathered 5 days ago, and I didn't see any management, I didn't see any politicians, I didn't see anybody there hardly, and I'm sure that was by design. And I'm a little concerned that shows either fear or lack of interest or something. I think that it should have that somebody should have been out there pretending to talk to those people and pretending to listen. And the absence of anybody sends the wrong message. Thank you.
Actually, it's just we weren't invited. It's fairly simple. That does it for item 4. Bev Lane has had to take off, so we're back to committee comments. Director Rosario.
No, thank you for the both presentations. Were well done and a lot of work. And thank you to Becky for overseeing the public comments. And again, I appreciate all the participants and their willingness to show up and voice their concerns. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, me too. That's all I can add. Again, we appreciate all the work and effort that goes into preparing these presentations and these meetings for us from all the staff and Becky for all your work. Is there a comment from the general manager? I don't see her jumping up and down.
I don't have, thank you, President Coffey. I don't have any additional comments other than to say that thank you to the committee. This was very helpful on behalf of all of staff as on an issue that we have all been working on for years. And so we really appreciate your support of our recommendation and all of the participation from the public. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on. And I do think the impetus for undertaking the preliminary thoughts on the master planning process is a good one. So I'm glad that came up and came out from the proposal and from this meeting. So that we probably all agree. So with that, unless I see any other hands, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all and have a really nice afternoon out there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Colin.
Thank you.